What led to Jim Knowles choosing to leave Ohio State and go to Penn State? Well, we know most of the answers to that question, and there are many answers to that question, but Heather Dinich wrote a really good profile of one Jim Knowles and learned some new things. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, welcome. Thank you for joining us here. We talk college football. We talk football year round. So if that is something you're into, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like this video, and answer the question below. Do you think that there was ever a moment for which Jim Knowles was going to stay at Ohio State? Some people believe no. Others believe yes. And I choose to take him at his word because there's really no good reason for lying about these things. However, I did think that it was interesting that neither Ryan Day nor Ross Bjork chose to comment on the story as Jim Knowles and James Franklin were telling what happened on their end. Many of you have known for some time that Knowles is from Philadelphia. He went to St. Joe's Prep, which is also where Kyle McCord and Marvin Harrison Jr. went to school before going to Ohio State. You also know he's the best defense coordinator in the country last year. He had my vote for the Broyles Award, and I thought he should have won it. I think that Al Golden's just fine. I'm good with that, right? I think the finalists, for the most part, any one of those guys could have won that award and would have been well-deserved. That said, that dude's defense was pretty nasty, particularly when their back was against the wall. There was nothing more cool than watching the Ohio State defense bow up on the goal line. They would come up with big play after big play after big play, especially against Penn State. Later, national championship game against Texas, goes on and on. Some of this people put to Knowles in the defense. Some of this we put to the personnel. It's got to be both, man. You got to have a guy that knows what he's doing in that 4-2-5, and you got to have players that know their roles in it and can execute. And he had great players. He had guys like Cody Simon, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau. You know the list of people, right? Latham Ransom. Use Caleb Downs to great effect, which we're never going to give a guy enough credit for how he is able to utilize a superstar, because that's what we think the bare minimum is. You should be able to utilize him unlike anything else. It's like giving Phil Jackson credit for Michael Jordan or Kobe or Shaq, and yet check the championships. Or giving Steve Kerr, credit for Steph Curry. Mark Jackson would like a little bit of that too. And it goes down the line. But I think it says so much about these guys that you're able to get them to play at a high level in high leverage games. And I thought the flip that the Ohio State defense did after losing a regular season game to Oregon, also, he deserves some credit for. Now, there were some reports of some consternation after that game. As we know, Ryan Day had some come-to-Jesus meetings about just how they were going to play defense going forward. Nick Saban laid into the defense for being basic, for being predictable, and they got out of it. They started blitzing more. They got it a little bit more exotic with their packages, but for the most part, the shell was the shell, and the players in the shell remained the same. So as they get close to the national championship game, Jim Knowles, who had signed a contract earlier and had a contract that would continue to go through, expected to get a contract extension in front of him, an offer of a contract extension in front of him before the national championship game. Didn't really elaborate on why he thought that would happen, except that he thought it would. It did not happen then. And then the championship comes and you win it. And all of a sudden, you've got an arms race for a defense coordinator among really important schools. Ohio State, Penn State lost Tom Allen to Clemson, right? Al Golden at Notre Dame goes to Cincinnati Bengals, right? Oklahoma loses Zach Alley to West Virginia. And now you've got four powers really looking for the best option at defense coordinator. And one of the things that James Franklin told Dinich that I think is also true is the list of guys that foot the bill for these sorts of jobs, even at the head coaching level, is very short. And it's because you got to be able to get it past so many people. It's one thing for you or I to have a list of guys that we would love to go talk to about any job at any time. It's another thing for them to be able to, go get that guy. And for that guy to pass muster with not just the head coach or the athletic director, but the president and its biggest alumni boosters and regents, right? This is where character comes into play. This is where fundraising comes into play. Name recognition as well as your resume. Can people pull it up out of the Rolodex that is their head? For instance, you don't need to know that Jim Knowles was at Oklahoma State before he was at Ohio State. You only need to know that Jim Knowles was defense coordinator for the Ohio State national championship team in 2024. That's what you need to know. If you could pull that out of your brain, then you've got the right guy for the job. Penn State, though, got a phone call to James Franklin. Okay? It wasn't James Franklin calling Jim Knowles. It was the other way around, which I thought was also telling and interesting. Number one, it's a job that just came open. You got a really good job at Ohio State. Number two, it wasn't always clear that Penn State was going to go get Jim Knowles, which I thought that was always going to be the case, right? If you got a chance to go get the best defense coordinator in college football, you go do that. What had happened was get a call and finally get an offer from Ohio State, and you say, hey, this is also what I'm looking for. If you give me this, though, I think I can come to Happy Valley. At the same time, while Jim Knowles is considering his contract extension, which would have made him the highest paid coordinator in the sport at $2.75 million, he is also being asked not to attend the Buckeyes National Championship parade because people aren't quite sure that he is going to be here after the parade is done. And he says he respected that, which is another way of saying kind of got under his skin because you're not allowing him the opportunity to celebrate a victory that he helped achieve because he might not be around for what the future holds. I understand why Ross Bjork or Ryan Day would not want to comment on such a thing, even if it sounds trivial. I don't think there's winners and losers in that one. I think there's perspectives. If you're an Ohio State fan, you bleed scarlet and gray, you're going to go, hey, I don't really want anybody there that isn't going to be there for the long term, especially if you went to school there. I get it because it's kind of like family. You don't get to not be family. If you went to Ohio State or you got people at Ohio State, you're stuck with them. And that's the kind of person you want to be your defense coordinator. And it's one of the reasons why the Buckeye fan base is also renowned. I don't think anybody is harder on their college football teams than the Buckeyes. I mean, it's not unlike Philadelphia Eagles fans who can come after you for almost anything. Buckeyes fans were upset about losing to Michigan. Like they were upset about not winning the Big Ten championship. They wanted to win the national championship, and there was at least a growing minority of people, of persons that believed if Ryan Day didn't win the national championship, he might not be the head coach at Ohio State in 2025. Instead, they won it, and he gets his $12.5 million extension. Also in all of this, they did a great job of staying eligible and going to class. Like, as much as we talked about, oh man, the 16-game schedule is just going to be such a load on these players and their ability to go to school, the only FBS program in the entire country to score a perfect 1,000 APR is Ohio State. If the national champs can do it, nobody else has an excuse here, guys. And this is where we're seeing GPAs for football programs at all-time highs, in large part because they pay the players for having good grades now with the Austin Award. But that's a side note. Things are going Ohio State's way, right? They're going to turn over a bunch of players that got selected in the NFL draft. Chief among them, Emeka Buka, right? But they got Jeremiah Smith. Will Howard, but they got Julian Sam. Keep going down the line on this. They also turned over a bunch on the staff. So you're asking yourself, what could you do if you're Jim Knowles that you haven't already done and you feel like you should be rewarded, not just with an extension that's going to pay you more, but an extension that comes before you play for the national championship, which leaves, the idea that if you lost the national championship game, you would also be able to keep your job. Again, timing on this and feelings and talking about these things is important. Like, I'm an over-communicator. I believe in over-communication. I believe that everybody needs to feel good about what we're doing. And if somebody feels slighted, we got to fix that. And we got to fix it quick, fast, and in a hurry. There's only so much. There's only so much that you can leave to chance, especially if you have people around you that depend on you. I look at it in terms of how close you are to power is how much money you're making. So at a point, money is about keeping score, right? For some of these guys, it will always be about keeping score, but it also is about priority. If you're paying somebody to be the highest paid defensive coordinator of the sport, you want one of two things. You either want them to go do their job without needing any pat on the back or any extra motivation, or you want them to know that they got a direct line to you, that anytime they need to talk it out, they need to move it out, you are there. They get the star treatment, right? Because they are stars. You have different rules for different people. Maybe Jim Knowles believed that he was supposed to be there in the Ohio State organization and wasn't. Maybe he was, and he just wanted to change, but that doesn't seem like what it is. It does feel like he wanted to go home. It does feel more and more, and I was skeptical about this in January, but I'm not so much now in May, that he did want to go coach at Penn State. And the first thing that he did was hand Drew Aller his scouting report, for which Aller called it eye-opening. I'm like, okay, cool, bet. They knew what Drew Aller was going to do and why he was going to do it. So you're telling me that Notre Dame did a great job with their scouting report. Boise State did a great job with their scouting report. Oregon did a decent job with their scouting report. The book on that quarterback is known, okay? And it's why I'm not going to have Penn State at number 1 in my 135 in my top 25 to start. It's not happening because I don't trust him to go get you wins, all right? You've also lost Tyler Warren. Yeah, you brought in a couple wide receivers, and you got, I think, the best tailback tandem in the sport today. But if it comes down to Drew Aller having to make a play, we've already seen how that goes. Riley Leonard made a play, and Drew Aller threw the ball to the other team. A defensive coordinator is not going to help you with that no matter what he knows about you. That's about Drew Aller, right? That is what Jim Knowles is joining. You're joining a program where the quarterback of the team was the setback, okay? That wasn't true at Ohio State. Will Howard ends up going lights out, going supersonic, right? I mean, I felt the man's ultra instinct against Tennessee. I saw the man go Super Saiyan Blue against Oregon. He had it. Drew Aller ain't giving me that moment. I've never seen it from him. And they're going to get a soft schedule to start. They got 4 home games to open the season. And then they get Oregon, who ain't got Dylan Gabriel this year, but they got a Dante Moore, and they expect to be good. I mean, DeCorian Moore should be as advertised, which means that Jeremiah Smith, DeCorian Moore are going to make up 2 of the top 4 wide receivers in the sport that are underclassmen. Ryan Wingo at Texas and Ryan Williams at Alabama being the others. So there's lots to move here. But I'm more interested in how this game is going to get played now that we know these things about Jim Knowles, and we know these things about Penn State, and we know these things about Ohio State, and maybe you feel a little bit better about Matt Patricia being your defense coordinator at Ohio State if you were skeptical to begin with because of what you have learned here now.